Thank you for staying tuned. Well, you're still watching Niger Delta Today. As we hinted earlier, staff in Akwa Ibom tertiary institutions are gearing up for an indefinite shutdown unless urgent demands are met. In a communique, the aggrieved academics drawn from the four state government-owned tertiary institutions under the aegis of the Joint Council of Unions, JCU, threatened to call out their members across the four campuses following what they called government's reluctance to implement salary and allowance review. With us today is Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics ASUP Chairman of the ASUP Aqua Poly chapter, herself also Chairman, ASUP NLC State Executive Council, Comrade Nyeneime Raphael, to unpack the implications for the students, institutions, and the state's development trajectory in education. You're welcome on the program, Comrade. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us, Comrade.
Well,
Thank you.
Your communique says since February 2025, it has been an ongoing negotiation, dialogue with the government to see how you can reach a common ground and bring about implementation of some of your demands that have been listed here. Could you bring us up to speed with some background as to how long this has lingered indeed, and what interfaces you've had with the government towards resolving the pending issues that you are aggrieved about?
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome.
Just for clarity, the Joint Council of Unions in state-owned tertiary institutions in Akwa Ibom State has been on this matter since February 2025 up till date. It's been a series of meetings here and there with the government representatives. I mean, the government representatives now referring to the Commissioner for Labor and Manpower Planning and the essay on labor. We've also had interference with the Commissioner for Education. The last two meetings we've had with the government representatives, we had it with the heads of institutions in attendance. So it's been a back and forth for that long.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, your communique lists the 35% or 25% reviewed consolidated salary structure, hazard allowances, 30,000 naira for senior staff, 15,000 for junior staff, and domestic servants driver allowances as key demands. From your perspective, I would like to know, are these realistic and immediate demands for the Akwa Ibom state government, or are they as part of the issues on ground? How far have negotiations gone towards resolutions of these areas that you have mentioned?
Well, let me first start by thanking the Executive Governor of Akwa Ibom State, our dear Governor Pastor Basi Umoina PhD, for granting us the audience. So far, so good. The governor is a labor-friendly governor. But as we speak, I would have loved to decline speaking on this matter, owing to the fact that after the meeting of Friday, because we met with the government representatives on the 24th of October, that was Friday last week, still finding ways to find a common ground where we can meet. And that meeting didn't yield anything fruitful. Another meeting has been scheduled to hold on the 31st of October, that's Friday coming. But it's so far so good. The government has actually given us listening ears. They've assented to one of our demands, especially the payment of domestic servants to Akwa Ibom State, staff members of Akwa Ibom State University, that's ASUP. We now have three matters left on the board. The implementation of the 35-25% salary increase and hazard allowance. I don't know whether I might be too forward to say that the representative of the governor, the AC on labor, Mr. Kirian, Udo Kirian, told us that the governor is only ready to handle one matter, which is against what we want. Because from the meeting of the 9th of October, that's the same thing he told us. And we left that meeting to go back to our congresses at the 4 tertiary institutions so as to get the feelers of our members on ground. And after enough negotiations, enough deliberations with congressmen and women, the Congress actually resolved that if the government fails to negotiate and implement our demands, that we should proceed on an industrial action. Mm. We've even been so benevolent to say, let's look at implementation of the 25% and the 30%, the 30,000, 15,000 hazard allowance. But you know you cannot go to a negotiation table and the person who you want to negotiate with is already giving you his standpoint before you even start negotiation. That's more or less like boxing the union into a circle. You put us in a cupboard and you don't allow us to talk. We would have expected as union leaders that the representatives of government would come to the table with an open mind to ask us, what do you think we can do for you that is achievable? Instead of them coming to tell us the governor is going to only pick on the 25-35% and now negotiate. He's not even talking about implementation. Mm. But the stance of the union is that we are not negotiating the 25-35%. We are looking at implementation. If we want to talk of negotiation, it can only be on the arrears. What we are talking about, we have an arrears of 34 months. 25-35% came on board January 2023. This is 2025. So the whole of 2023, the whole of 2024, and now we are in the 10th month of 2025, is a whole backlog of arrears. So government will only sit on the table with us to negotiate our arrears, not the implementation of the percentages. We're not negotiating that one.
All right, Comrade Nyeneime. Comrade Nyeneime, you can hear me. Is it not possible to just make do with what you have for now while negotiation continues without going on strike? Isn't that possible?
What do we have?
With what they've given you already while negotiation is ongoing.
They're not giving us anything.
Mm.
They're not giving us anything. The payment of domestic servants for academic staff in ASUP. Remember that ASUP had already gone on strike independently on this matter, and this was part of their demand. But because they were members of the Joint Council, we only carried that demand and added it to the Joint Council demand. So if we want to look at it holistically, the government has not even responded to us.
I'm looking at it based on the effect on the students who bear the brunt of strikes like this, and that is why I asked that question.
On the students?
Yes.
The students also understand that if their lecturers are not well paid, if the welfare of their lecturers are not given up attention, that they cannot get the best of what they need in school.
All right, for the benefits of viewers.
We have a union-friendly governor who would not allow the unions to go on strike.
Can you give us a sense of the scale of this industrial action if, let's say, it were to be embarked upon? You gave ending of this month as, you know, the deadline for the government to respond to your demands. How serious is that demand? How serious is that deadline?
The deadline is as serious as I speak to you on this phone. It's as serious as we speak. The deadline is 31st of October. And good and fine, the government representatives have called for a meeting on the same day. So assuming we get into that place and they don't tell us what we need to hear, what is humane, then our congressmen and women will take over from there.
So this strike, is it going to be a warning strike or an indefinite strike?
It's not going to be a warning strike. We had already, you remember that we suspended a strike as at April 2025. We were supposed to go on a strike as at April when we started this negotiation, before the government now called us for a meeting. So that strike as at April 2025 was suspended. It was not called off.
All right, comrade. Well, this impending strike is supposed to cut across the 4 tertiary institutions in the state.
Yes,
could you give us some sort of overview as regards what this shutdown across all the 4 campuses would really look like? We're talking about the impact on the education sector. It's going to affect the students who, of course, are going to be bearing the brunt hugely. And what is the overall scale of this particular planned action? And why is it cutting across the 4 institutions? Are these 4 institutions also bearing the same brunt? Or it's of different experiences?
very much. Just like I said, our youth Joint Council of Union in the state-owned tertiary institution. That cuts across ASUP, Akwa Ibom State Polytechnic, the College of Education, which is now University of Education, and we now have the College of Science and Technology in Morocco. I want you to understand that the union leaders of the Joint Council had actually made visits and held congresses in the 4 tertiary institutions, where we were opportune to meet with the management of each of these institutions to tell them why we were in their campus and the essence of going to meet with our people to educate them and actually brief them on the way forward if government still treat us the way we are going. So all the heads of institutions are aware of our stand. And why is it going to be across the state? It's because these are the state-owned tertiary institutions. And when you talk about the strike action is part of the union mechanism to put something back. Just remember, in the last few days, we had ASUP on strike. It will only make the students to stay back at home and read. As much as we want our students to read and their calendar is not distorted, the same thing goes to the workers. Let's not forget that most of the workers we are agitating for are parents of students in tertiary institutions. So what is biting the father also bites the child. So the child also understands that daddy needs to stay back home so that he can have a better pay, he can better taken care of, so that I can go to school too. The students will not frown at their lecturers or non-academic staff going on strike because the government is not handling us well. The times are tough.
All right, Comrade Nyeneime. You know, at times when we look at the history of lecturers going on strike, most times amount of demand is always the issue of the state of facilities and equipment in these institutions. But with these your demands, I have not seen the state of facilities and equipment, you know, in these state universities. Are you telling me that everything is cool and fine with regards to facilities in these tertiary institutions?
I didn't get that question. Everything is good and fine with regards to what?
I said most times when lecturers embark on strike like this, most of their demand also is always the state of facilities and equipment in the tertiary institutions. They complain a lot about it. Is everything okay in terms of the state of facilities in these tertiary institutions that may not warrant, you know, being a part of the demand that is being raised?
Okay, the state of facilities in the tertiary institutions, of course, you know that we cannot have 100% when it has to do with infrastructure. Infrastructural development is something that is a growing concern, something that is done at different stages. For example, if you come into my campus, the Akwa Ibom State Polytechnic, you will see a lot of projects ongoing. within the school. And for starters, the strike, if it holds, wouldn't be for just academic staff. We have non-academic, non-teaching staff also going to be a part of the strike. So it's going to be a total shutdown. It will be a total shutdown of activities in the 4 institutions.
Well, Comrade, let's...
The governor, our amiable governor, would not allow us to get to that point.
Let's look at a little bit more in detail the JSCU's demand, implementation of 35% and 25% consolidated salary reviews for academic and non-academic staff, plus hazard and domestic staff servant allowances. Now, how do these figures translate to what's obtainable in other states of the Federation, including federal institutions, for instance? When you look at comparatively what is happening in other states, would you say that Akwa Ibom is behind the curve, talking about investment in education and how it takes the sector seriously?
Investment in education?
Yes.
Akwa Ibom is being behind the curve. When we look at Akwa Ibom State and we put Bayelsa State at par with Akwa Ibom State, if Bayelsa State has implemented the 25-35% as it was implemented at the federal level, Bayelsa State has done them across all its tertiary institutions. And you look at a state like Nasarawa State, who goes home with less, far less than what Akwa Ibom State is taking. Who should take care of their staff more? It should be Akwa Ibom State. Akwa Ibom State should be at the forefront of leading in payment of this sort of nature. Because we know, I'm not putting the entire blame on the governor. You know, the governor sits on a seat where he has so many things to handle. And he has advisors who are supposed to give him adequate advice on the things he's supposed to do for time. So maybe somewhere, somehow, someone is not doing his or her job well. Because if you give the governor the necessary advice on matters concerning education, I believe he would handle it with just the tip of the finger. It's not something we need to go on a strike for.
The advisors are not doing well. They're not pushing for it.
And that's what I believe. We may tend to believe that. Because if we were to sit one-on-one with the governor himself, we will make him understand why this demand shouldn't have stayed for so long.
Have you asked for a one-on-one with the governor?
We've not had a one-on-one with him.
Have you asked for a one-on-one with him?
Of course, the letters we've written has gone to his office, through the Commissioner for Education, through the essay on labor matters, and even through the Commissioner for Labor and Manpower Planning.
Well, your communique...
So he's much aware of our agitation.
Your communique had also mentioned issues around discriminatory payment structures among tertiary institutions. Could you clarify which schools or categories of staff are most affected by this disparity that you speak of, and how that inequality has shaped the morale and perception of these staff that are affected, which of course may have contributed one way or the other to this planned strike?
Okay, the allowances, the political allowances we're talking about would range from the CWES allowance, Learned Society, and journals. You know, these allowances are actually paid to academic staff and senior non-teaching staff who have gotten professional registration and who are members of professional bodies. So across these tertiary institutions, we have persons within the same cadre. They remove like 5 people and pay, while the rest of the 50 are not being paid. That's why we say discriminatory payment. It should be across board. If you're paying it to level 13 workers, all level 13 workers should have CWES, Learned Society, and journal publications. So in a situation where you have a few persons being picked to be paid these allowances, it dampens the morale of every other worker who doesn't have it.
So, Comrade Nyeneime, did you find out from them the reason why a few people are selected to be paid for this?
No reason has been given for it.
Well,
we've made findings at the bursary units of these institutions, and nobody tends to understand why they're not being paid.
How would you respond to critics who might argue that, the state is grappling with limited resources given current fiscal pressures? How do you respond to those who say Akwa Ibom simply can't afford these allowances now without jeopardizing what's happening in other sectors?
That's not possible. Not a state like Akwa Ibom State. Education is a priority. So the finances coming into Akwa Ibom State is enough, well over, to take care of this minimal, I call it minimal because these are minimal demands. They're demands that will not even touch the chunk of the money that comes into Akwa Ibom State.
Okay, well.
So if the state governor wants to pay, I know he would pay.
So what do you think are those bottlenecks that are preventing this? And when you look across the Niger Delta region, do you think that there are states that Akwa Ibom could borrow some leaves from regarding its consistency or interest in the education sector? What would you even rate Akwa Ibom's investment in education sector currently? Is it commendable, or are there still areas that needs to be taken care of effectively?
Rating of Akwa Ibom State under the educational subsector is commendable, but I want to make mention of tertiary institutions. I think the governor, our Excellency Pastor Umweno, PhD, is more focused on the primary education than the tertiary. Tertiary education are the recipients of the primary and secondary graduates. You know, we are more or less like the last point after training them through the primary school, the secondary school, you push them here. So if we're investing so much in the primary schools, where we have model primary schools springing up here and there, I would want the state governor to also take a look at the tertiary institutions. Take, for instance, Akwa Ibom State Polytechnic, Ikorosurwa. In this polytechnic where I lecture, we don't have a standard lecture theater. You don't have a place where you can put like 500 students in the lecture theater and have lecture. The presence of the visitor to the Polytechnic is highly needed in the Polytechnic as well as other institutions. If we did not even have the TED fund sponsorship, that means schools would be rotting off. Because most of the projects we have within the state-owned institutions are being sponsored by TED fund. So it's a call for the state governor to turn his eyes now to the tertiary institutions. And I believe the Commissioner for Education would be able to put that forth to him. They should take a survey to different schools. What are the needs? Needs assessment should be done at the different schools, the tertiary institutions. What do you guys need? I wouldn't even want to talk about a school like the Nogum, College of Science and Technology in Nogum. If you go to that school, you would weep. There is no infrastructure. There is nothing happening there. It's high time they invest more in tertiary institutions.
So, Comrade Nyeneime, why is it that this is not also part of the demand of the tertiary institution demand? I mean, why is it not part of the demand?
Like we always say, a luta continua. If we put all our matters at once in a leaflet like this and send to the government, the fight would stop there. So that we can have something to fight tomorrow as union leaders. We bring them in peace.
So
we keep fighting.
You're already envisioning a continuous fight, even if this particular issues you've put out are resolved.
The fight continues.
All right, well, comrade, the communique's October 31 deadline looks really firm. Now, what if during that meeting on Friday, 31st October, the government sort of reaches an agreement with you, even if it doesn't respond immediately, but asks that you shelve embarking on this indefinite strike, as it would need to continue engaging your members towards reaching an impressive conclusion that would lead to both parties being able to align their interests. Would you agree to that?
Just like you said, concrete. Concrete means we've entered into an agreement, parties have signed to keep to the agreement.
No, there's no agreement now. They are simply saying, stay away from embarking on a strike for now. Let's continue dialoguing and negotiating.
It has to be something more binding, something with a deadline, implementable. It has to be an agreement between the parties, the government and the union. If we enter into that agreement, we'll just go back to our congresses and tell our members, this is what they've agreed with us. Without that, without a concrete agreement, I'm sorry to say, the 31st of October will happen.
Well, comrade, when strikes happen like this, it's always the students who become the collateral damage. You had spoken about this earlier, and you said the students will understand. To what extent will they understand, especially when you also have the task of ensuring that you balance your demands for welfare, with your moral duty and commitment to the students?
Okay, where I said the students will understand, because the students have also understood that we've been on this matter from February. So what more understanding can we show? We had to call off the strike in April when we were about to embark on it. And we looked at it and said, okay, let's give government time because they've called us to sit on a table. Then we've been sitting on the table since. Are we expecting the table legs to break before we stand up? I think it's high time we stood up for our rights. So the students would definitely understand because, of course, we've been carrying them along.
Well, I mean, comrade, with the different issues that we've had, several lecturers, leaving not just the state now, across the Niger Delta region, we've seen the constant issue of brain drain. Lecturers, health workers, and all of that moving away, for greener pasture, so they call it. Do you think that there are systemic steps that must be taken towards ensuring that there's a better deal for lecturers, not just in Akwa Ibom State, but across the Niger Delta region, to engender that commitment towards tutoring of these students?
Well, that's left for the government to decide, because the government also knows that the brain drain is not good. Just like you spotted out, we have loads of our colleagues who, if they have the slightest opportunity to even go outside for a further study, they don't even desire to come back. Because the conditions of service here, you can't compare with what you have outside. But Nigeria has the best of brains. We've been taken through rough procedures that makes us come out refined. So the best government can do is to sit down on a table just like the one we are sitting currently, to understand our needs. We are not demanding for so much. We have a lot of demands. Then we only sit down as union leaders to pick out the ones that we feel should be implemented to make us have a little bit of cushion while working. If you take, for instance, the issue of the hazard, the workplace hazard is a lot. So if you're paid a meagerly 2,000 naira for hazard, can you buy paracetamol for a month? Assuming you fall, can you dress your room? He will not. If you have a situation where you have someone working in the lab and acid pours on the person, 2,000 naira hazard allowance cannot take care of that issue. Those are the things that make workers to leave Nigeria and go for greener pastures because they know that their welfare will be better taken care of. But the people who are willing to stay, who are willing to stay back to work, we are calling on the government to please have a human face, to look at our matters which are not so much on the table, and find the reasons to attend to them so that we would do the job with so much gladness and fulfillment.
Okay, you're also the chairman, ASUP NLC State Executive Council. Are there any stakes that the NLC would play in this particular demand that you're putting forward to the government come Friday, as we anticipate this meeting you ought to have with the government?
Okay, I didn't also mention that in the course of the meetings, the several meetings we've been having, we always have the NLC chairman in attendance. The last meeting we had on the 24th of October, the NLC secretary was in attendance, and he heard our demands, he heard our sessions, and he also knows that this is our right that we're looking for. So the NLC is up to date with our demands, and they are giving us their full backing.
All right. Thank you very much, Comrade Nyeneime Raphael, for speaking to us in Niger Delta today. We appreciate your points and company on the program. And of course, also hope that your demands before Friday or even on Friday during the meeting would receive maximum attention from the quarters involved and lead to a resolution of this impending strike. Thank you for speaking to us.
Thank you for your time,
Amen.
Comrade.
Thank you very much.